Do you ever feel like you're just swimming in a sea of information, but you can't seem to grab onto anything that actually sticks? Yeah, you are not alone. So today, we're not just going to talk about learning, we're going to talk about learning how to learn. Let's dive in.
Okay, take a look at this number, 174. Kind of random, right? But believe it or not, this number is a huge part of your daily life. Any ideas what it could be?
Well, that's it. It's the equivalent of 174 newspapers worth of data that each of us is trying to process every single day. I mean, that's just a crazy flood of information coming at us from all over the place.
And here's the real kicker, right? We're taking in all this data, and yet we still have those moments. You're swimming in information, but trying to remember something simple, something important, like where on earth you put your keys, feels totally impossible.
So this really gets to the heart of the problem we're going to tackle, that feeling of drowning in information, and more importantly, what we can actually do to stay afloat.
And here's the most important thing to get right from the start. If you feel overwhelmed or forgetful, it's not you. It's not a personal failure. It's not about having a bad memory. It's about not having the right system in place to handle it all. And that's exactly what we're going to start building right now, beginning with the hardware we're all running on, our brains.
To even begin to build that system, first we got to understand the machine we're working with, right? Our own brain. And it turns out our brain has these two totally different but equally important ways of thinking.
So I want you to picture your brain like a pinball machine. When you're in focused mode, really concentrating on a problem you're familiar with, the bumpers in that machine are packed tightly together. Your thoughts just bounce around quickly in a familiar, concentrated pattern. But then there's diffuse mode. This is what happens when you relax, when you go for a walk or take a shower. The bumpers spread way, way out. This lets your thoughts roam free, making these broad, creative, and totally unexpected connections. The real magic, the real breakthroughs happen when you learn how to switch between these two modes on purpose.
And all of this is possible because of this amazing concept called neuroplasticity. I know, it's a fancy word, but all it really means is that your brain isn't set in stone. It's more like clay. Every time you learn something new, your neurons are building new pathways. They literally fire together and wire together. And that means your ability to learn is not fixed. You can actually build a better brain. How cool is that?
Okay, so knowing how our brain works is the why. Now let's get into the how. Let's build a practical toolkit with some of the most powerful learning techniques out there. First up is the Feynman technique, and it is genius because it's so simple. So you pick a concept you want to learn, let's say neuroplasticity. Now try to explain it out loud using the simplest words you can think of, like you're talking to a kid. You'll immediately feel where you get stuck, where you hesitate, or where you start using jargon. Those are your knowledge gaps. So you go back, you review the material to fill in those gaps, and then you try explaining it again. It's this powerful little loop that forces you to truly understand something.
All right, next in our toolkit is a technique called interleaving. Now, most of us learn by what's called blocked practice, practicing one thing over and over again, like a tennis serve. But interleaving says no, mix it up. You'd practice your serve, then a backhand, then a volley, all jumbled together. Now, at first, this feels way harder. It feels less productive because you can't get into a rhythm. But it turns out that struggle is exactly the point. It's what builds mental flexibility and leads to much deeper, much more lasting learning in the long run. And let's round out our toolkit with spaced repetition. You know how you cram for a test and then, like, a week later, it's all gone? Yeah, that's the forgetting curve in action. Spaced repetition is the perfect antidote. Instead of cramming, you review information at these strategic, slowly increasing intervals, maybe after a day, then a few days, then a week. That process tells your brain, hey, pay attention, this stuff is important, and that helps shuttle that knowledge from your flimsy short-term memory into solid long-term storage. So having these individual tools is awesome. But to really, truly conquer information overload, you need to pull them all together into one powerful system. And this is where the idea of building a second brain comes into play. Personal knowledge management, or PKM, is just the practice of building that system. I want you to think of it like an external brain, a trusted place outside your own head where you can capture and connect all your ideas. And what this does is it frees up your actual biological brain to do what it's best at, thinking, creating, and solving problems.
A great simple way to start is with Tiago Forte's code framework. First, you capture any idea that resonates with you. Then you organize it for action. Next, you distill it down to its absolute essence. And finally, and this is the most important step, you express it. You use that knowledge to create and share something new.
But
there's a huge warning here, something called the collector's fallacy. It's this trap we fall into where we believe that just gathering information means we understand it. It feels so productive to save articles and highlight stuff, but a lot of the time it's just an illusion. In fact, something like 2/3 of all the stuff we save online we never even look at again. The real value isn't in collecting, it's in connecting ideas and actually using them.
Okay, so let's bring this all home. We've looked at how our brain works, we've looked at the tools, we've looked at the systems we can use. But what's the real point of all this?
Look, the ultimate takeaway is this. Please, do not chase after the perfect, most complicated system. That can actually become a distraction. The real goal is to just build a simple, sustainable practice that fits into your life. A practice that takes the burden of remembering off your shoulders and frees you up to think, to create, and to learn way more effectively.
So, I want to leave you with this thought. Just imagine you're starting today. Your digital notebook, your second brain, is a completely blank page. Based on what you're curious about right now, what you're working on, or just an idea that sparked, what is the very first thing you'll add?